It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off because he's under the weather. He's got food poisoning, so we hope he gets well soon. All right, earlier we had played, and I never, just so much going on. I never completed my thought on Obama and aliens. All the talk last year, remember the video footage that was out there, and you had MTG out there talking about aliens, and Marco Rubio, not Marco Rubio, Tucker Carlson. I have some Marco Rubio audio cuts coming up here, so I was just on my mind. Tucker Carlson talking about the malevolent beings that exist out there, and it was just like, stop with this crap, for God's sakes. One of the most interesting things is, and even members of Congress become children when talking about this, there is no evidence. There is no evidence that aliens have traveled here. What I find fascinating is one of the things, whenever this talk comes up, that's left out of it is what the world's leading physicists have to say about it. And physicists look at this and just say, for the most part, there's four things that they agree on. Why aliens haven't come here, and why we're never getting out of the solar system. And it's speed, distance, fuel, and biology. And you've got so many physicists that look at this and say, this isn't like when the Wright brothers took off on the plane. We knew the physics of flight already. We knew it was a possibility. How? Birds and then kites. And the whole concept of propulsion and lift and all that was understood in the late 1700s. The actual physics of that was understood. So physicists look at this and they just say, there are laws of physics that aren't negotiable. And all these things, not one thing, but you've got multiple things of why we're not going to be able to go very far. Well, yeah, but when we get to the new technology, well, you're just saying when we get to the new technology, you don't know whether it's even possible to get to whatever technology you're talking about, because the real world is not beaming atoms from a starship down to the planet. Science fiction. And it's a fascinating conversation to watch one side talking about, that it's out there. And so I'm actually glad Obama brought it up, because you can actually have the discussion, but nobody's having the discussion with people that actually understand physics. Can't go faster than the speed of light. That means nobody's going anywhere far. The percentages, it may be up for debate, but nobody debates the fact that anybody who goes to Mars and comes back is going to have a significant increase percentage of getting cancer. Can't stop the radiation. And if you're going to stop the radiation, it adds weight to the spaceship. And not only do you have to go somewhere, well, once you get in space, you don't need any energy. You do to stop. Then you needed to turn around and come back again. Distance, speed, fuel. The fuel conversations I've seen are just fascinating. The fuel, because they're like anything that you add, you've got to add so much fuel. To send a tiny thing somewhere, you've got to have the fuel to bring it back. And going through the actual calculations of that. And then the last one is biology. The human body, or any life force ever that exists and has been formed through evolution to exist on their planet and on our planet. And when those things are changed, your body changes. But when they get to time and everything else, well, we can do the cryogenic research, and the physicists say it's garbage. You can't do that. That's the biggest false thing. You can't freeze cells like that and a human body and a brain and bring it back. It's not going to happen. And then just talking about speed and distance and fuel, it's fascinating, but the discussion never is had with physicists. And the whole point is, as a physicist, and I've watched a number of these things over the past couple of weeks, because once you put it into the algorithm, I did it last year when all the discussion came up, not just a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, when the whole discussion was coming up, and the algorithm just gave me physicist after physicist after physicist saying, we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving the solar system. Humans aren't. And it's a fascinating discussion based on the actual science, which they don't have, when you had the zoo going on last year on all of this. So, yeah, I just, because the science is interesting. And it was interesting because one physicist was said, now I got you all depressed. Because it's like, what do you mean? We may be alone on this universe? Well, we may not be, but we're never going to know. The time thing is interesting, too, and this is something that I had talked about before. This is the first thing that really hit me a long time ago when I heard, the whole thing about the universe, 14 billion years of age, and any species is limited on their planet. So if a species existed that got to a certain level of intelligence 1 billion years ago, they're not here now. And the fact that there is no radio waves anywhere, that's also an indication. There is no sign of it, especially when there have been, even if it was 2, 3, 4 million years ago, we would be receiving some kind of radio signals that would show, not necessarily trying to communicate with us, just radio signals that come from a normal, even from an alien society would produce radio signals in some way to get to it. And then they got through the whole society thing of it. Even if you could do these things, if a trip's going to take 10 years, even if, you sit there and say, okay, in this small society, we're going to reproduce and do it. There are so many things that, and they said the biggest one is to the moon and back. That was 3 days. Once you're out there, something goes wrong. There's no help. You got to be able to repair it. And so the point was, are there aliens that have visited Europe or visited us? Visited Europe. Yes, they've gone to Europe, and they hate Trump, so they don't come to the United States. If there's aliens, have they come here? And the answer would be probably not. They go, in science, you're always doing probabilities. Probably not. Is it possible? Yes. But anything over 0% is possible. It's to what degree it's possible. So I thought that was pretty cool stuff. And it got the discussion going. I do want to play some stuff, though. I do want to make sure that we get some of the positive stuff that happened over the weekend, and that was Marco Rubio. The discussion's there. already. Rubio's not going to say it, but you've got Republicans saying, okay, Rubio should run with Vance or should run against Vance. Rubio's saying he won't, but that discussion is already out there. He comes across as, I guess I sort of hate the word, but I don't know another word to describe it. He comes across as a statesman. Here he is at the Munich Security Conference.
We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it.
By the way, you got a standing ovation. They were cheering like crazy. All right, let's go to Scott Jennings analyzing the Munich Security Conference. Here we go.
Look, this Munich Security Conference put on full blast the fact that we've only got one adult political party in the United States right now, and it's the Republican Party. Marco Rubio gave the speech of a lifetime over there. He laid out a clear foreign policy vision that defends Western values and Western civilization. And the brightest Democrat over there, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, crapped the bed, okay? She wants to be president. She wants to run. And she's one of the most popular Democrats and gave one of the most embarrassing performances you could possibly do. Gretchen Whitmer, one of the governors that Bakari is touting, said she knows even less about foreign policy than AOC, and Gavin Newsom has repeatedly embarrassed himself every time he's gone to one of these international conferences, whether it was Davos a few weeks ago or Munich. He can't even rebuild a single house in the Palisades in Los Angeles. In California, people are running out of there like crazy right now. The bottom line is this. These international conferences have been a disaster for Dems, and they have showed Republicans, in the name of Marco Rubio this time around, to be adults who have a clear-eyed view of what the United States has to do in the future.
I think that's pretty accurate. And I think one of the greatest things that was at least observed was that even Democrats aren't saying much about Newsom. Democrats aren't saying much about AOC. Democrats aren't saying anything about Hillary Clinton, and that's killing Hillary. And, of course, as we know, people ask, well, why was she there? She's not representing the United States. No, it was President's Day weekend, and she was celebrating almost President's Day. Okay, I know I told that joke to start the show off, but it made me laugh. I think it was comedian Steve Byrne who put that on there. And because people are wondering, why is she there? Because, well, obviously it's President's Day weekend. She was celebrating almost President's Day. So it's that's great. All right, we are Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Most owner-operators leased to larger carriers are paid on a per-mile basis or a percentage of revenue per load. The per-mile basis is most prevalent among larger fleets. Percentage at smaller. Pay per mile tends to dominate discussions about pay just because it's easier to measure, and pay per mile often is wrongly used as the deciding factor in leasing to a carrier. While pay per mile can be a vital factor, it's not a cure for every ill, nor does it mean a big settlement check is coming an owner-operator's way. Why? Because pay per mile always must be considered in balance with gross revenue as well as total costs. Gross revenue can include flat mileage pay that varies by length of haul, percentage revenue pay, and more. Most importantly, though, for every revenue dollar generated, only part of that dollar is profit. But for every extra dollar of cost saved, the entire dollar contributes to profit. Knowing and understanding your cost to operate is fundamental to understanding the true value of any pay package. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
We are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has food poisoning. Hopefully he's back tomorrow. We hope he feels better. I hear it's bad. All right. With all the Olympic talk this week, well, at least that you hear over the weekend, I actually got people emailing me, and I was busy this weekend. I was up in New York visiting my dad, watching my great nephew play basketball, and just didn't have time to really watch anything. But I was getting text messages from my buddies. Hey, turn it on. Curling's on. Huh? What? Now, I did like the videos I saw on YouTube with the cats as the stone, these kitty cats as stones. So I saw a couple of those. But there's all the discussion of the one American skier who's doing it for China and making money. There's the athletes that don't like the United States. There's that tennis player who said she's quitting tennis because of the racism. You'd like to hear something positive, right? All this victimization, all this, oh, poor me, poor me. I saw this audio cut over the weekend, and it was from Patrick Ewing, the New York Knicks legend. Came to the United States when he was 12 years old from Jamaica. Here's a discussion. He was at a fundraiser. Here we go. Listen to this.
How important is it for kids of certain communities to have access to opportunities like this?
Oh, I think it's great. Like I said, I'm from Jamaica. He's from Haiti. There's a lot of black and brown people who have moved here to this country and have done extremely well. I thank my mom and my dad every time I go to their grave for bringing me to this country and for me to be able to achieve the dreams that I was able to dream. Those are the kinds of things I try to teach or try to echo to these kids, no matter where they're from, be it they may be immigrants, they may be American or born here. It's about the opportunities. When given an opportunity, you take advantage of it. When you have a passion for something, make sure you put the work in. Don't let anybody tell you that you cannot do it. Because once upon a time, someone told me that I wasn't going to be able to do it. If I had listened to that person, I wouldn't have been what I became.
There you go, Patrick Ewing. I just saw it, little refreshing there. Oh, I can't forget. Canadians, you cheaters! I have never. And I grew up on the border, so I actually grew up watching curling on the Canadian channels. Oh, we got to hit on this. The separatist movement in Alberta, they got a vote coming up. They've got a vote. We got to hit this story coming up. It really just fascinating. The separatist vote, they want that. We don't know what the vote's going to be, but it's going to be on the ballot that, would start, guess the process, whether it would ever happen or not. But it's interesting because the head of the secession movement in Ottawa was saying that the U.S. treats them better than their own country. So that was also brought up, too, at the Geneva conference about freedom of speech in Europe, which, by the way, we should pound on that over and over and over again. So we'll have some of that coming up, plus more, because that's going to be the topic this week with the partial government shutdown, is voter ID. More comments on that, more audio on that coming up, too.
They live the life. They walk the walk. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. Red Eye Radio.
Live what life? We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a morning off because he's under the weather. Hopefully we see him back tomorrow. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. Found this interesting. Wall Street Journal had an article on it, then also some audio from the secessionist lawyer in Alberta. And we had talked about this. I brought it up a couple weeks ago, and I said, wow, what set off there's a bunch of people that I know from Canada. And I've explained before that my dad's father came from Canada. Why? Because of the bigotry towards Irish Catholics in Ontario, the first part of the last century. That's why I'm here. So I'm a victim, and I'm really pushing hard for Irish reparations. We don't necessarily need money. Okay, I won't go into the drinking stereotype. But they were going, these people in the music business that I know. I know them by reputation and because I've met them on social media years ago. And all of a sudden they just went nuts at Alberta. Like, well, what happened there? Well, Alberta is poised to hold a referendum. And these people, by the way, I talked to are all from Ontario. They're poised to hold a referendum on seceding from Canada later this year. This from the Wall Street Journal. And supporters of the secession movement credit Trump's disruptive energy for adding fuel to their movement. They view Trump as a powerful ally in their quest to rattle Canada's liberal politics and supercharge oil production, and no obstacle to their independence, even if statehood is unlikely. Alberta's independence is a remote but chilling prospect for Canada. The Western Province is a resources powerhouse that holds most of Canada's crude oil. Only Saudi Arabia and Venezuela have bigger reserves of crude. Trump administration officials have repeatedly welcomed Alberta's independence and independence leaders to visit Washington for discussions on energy and trade. Let me see here. Rather than making Alberta a state, he said talks are aimed at ensuring a declaration of independence wouldn't interrupt its sizable trade with the United States. Trump himself has not commented on Alberta's secession. In response to questions from the Wall Street Journal, the White House said the administration officials meet with a number of civil society groups. No supporter commitments were conveyed. They talk about the oil, but they say after more than a decade of liberal Canadian prime ministers, politically conservative Alberta is fed up with its minority status in Ottawa and sending money east to the population centers like Toronto and Montreal that are more ideologically tuned to the U.S.'s bluest cities. Secessionists tap Alberta's deep sense of taxation without representation. Polls in Alberta weren't even close when the Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals were declared victors in last April's elections, reinforcing a sense of political powerlessness in the province. The next day, Smith, an Alberta premier, charged the federal government with taking hostile actions against Alberta in the form of regulations on oil production and set in motion a rule change to half the number of signatures needed to force a referendum. Carney, who grew up in Alberta but hasn't publicly engaged on the secessionist movement, later gave ground, softening some regulations, but still the premier's position on independence remains, I believe, Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. But again, it all gets back to, as we've said before, that's why we have said with the Liberals here in the United States, number one, they don't understand the Constitution. They don't even know what's in the Constitution. Number two, when you talk about getting rid of the Electoral College, when they talked about getting rid of the Senate, which now the Democrats are talking more than ever, the reason that the Senate exists is so there's representation, so you don't have areas of the country that say we have no representation at all. Because if it's all done, if the bicameral legislature of the Senate and the House is all population, then you have great areas of the country that have no representation at all. The Senate, created by the Founding Fathers because they knew what starts civil wars. What started our Civil War? Taxation without representation. Our Civil War with how the country was founded. When you don't have representation, when people do not believe that they are represented, that's when people start talking about, we can't deal with this anymore. We have to have representation. And so it's the same thing here in the United States, with the left trying and doing everything they can, to get rid of the Electoral College. They're not getting far on it because you have to have a constitutional amendment. That's not going to happen. You're not going to get the number of states you need. And also their bid to get rid of the Senate. They don't believe, why should California have 2 senators and Rhode Island have 2 senators? Because you want at least some equal representation in one part of the legislative branch. Not going to have it in the House, but you get some, and that's the formation, whether it's Alberta saying, you guys are telling us what to do, and we have no representation. We can't stop it. Sort of the helplessness that you can see in rural areas of California, Illinois, New York. I mean, the whole thing with Mondani now saying, okay, we want to tax all companies. We want the state tax, corporate tax rate to go up to support what we want here in New York City. I live there. I'm back there all the time. The culture, if you live in Western New York, Central New York, Adirondack region, people look at it and go, we're not represented. We're not represented in this state. Whenever they try to pass, any more restrictive gun laws, go outside to the suburbs, go out to the rural areas. They're as conservative as you can get. I've talked about this with New York. I'm from New York. I've always been a conservative. Let me correct that. I'm from the Buffalo area. Are you from New York? No, I'm from Buffalo. Now, Buffalo itself is liberal. Not as maybe insane liberal as, for example, a San Francisco or New York, a Chicago. But I came from the suburbs, and the suburbs there, just like when I grew up in Oregon. What did I write the other day? I went to a wedding 6 years ago this past weekend, and I posted that it was the last time I was back to Oregon. I need to get back, and some of our listeners are reminding me how liberal they are. And, I told them, I said, well, I worked at one of the best conservative talk radio stations in the United States, KXL, with the great Lars Larson. And, when you live there, you realize, inside the population centers can't be as communist. Let me correct this. More communist than China. But you get out to the suburbs and you get out to the rural areas, and that's why you have, 15 counties in Eastern Oregon. They want us to see. They want to become part of Idaho. They don't feel that they're represented. And so I've been doing this such a long time, and since day one of being a radio talk show host since 89, we're going to have a civil war. I said, well, actually, civil wars aren't created because of the situations that people were talking about at that time. But civil wars, you start grabbing a hold of it when people believe they don't have representation. Because if you don't have representation, and it's interesting to watch, in the Munich Security Conference, AOC talking about how they're all democracy. Well, democracy is about representation. And they believe that only some states should be able to control the entire country. Because if you don't believe in the Senate and you don't believe in the Electoral College, and you don't believe in the three branches of government and the responsibilities of each branch of government, if you believe, for example, that judges should make law, you don't believe in democracy. And so it's interesting to watch that. But I think a lot of people, if you actually pay attention to what the left says, when they say things, they're actually projecting the opposite. They don't believe in democracy. When they call you a fascist, they know you're not. When they promote that they're more democratic, no, they're not. Think about it. You're going to hear a lot of it this week. And Republicans should just say, I think there should be hey, let me give Republicans the talking point for this week. Democrats want to shut down the government. They want to ensure that, because I don't know what's going to happen with, when TSA gets paid, if you get close to that, where they start leaving at that point. Or federal enforcement can't do their job. Federal law enforcement can't do their job. We'll see who crumbles first on this one. But Republicans should say nothing except Democrats want the government to be shut down so fraud will happen in elections. And say it over and over again. Democrats want the government shut down so they can cheat. Democrats are no better than the Canadian curling team. Democrats are not better than Alberta. I'm covering all my bases here, aren't I? But I think it's fascinating, what's happening, because I remember the, Quebec secession movement way back, long time ago, 45 years ago? This one is actually based on conservative versus liberal. This is based on, these are our national resources, and you're telling us we can't do anything with it. We feel helpless, completely helpless, and you're only going in one direction. And I still know, I've got relatives still in Canada. Don't communicate as much as we used to, but I can guarantee they don't go along with the craziness. They don't go along with the lack of free speech rights that's happening in Canada. I know a ton of Canadians that don't agree with that at all. And a ton of them live in Alberta, and a ton of them live outside the population centers of Canada. We are Red Eye Radio.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
We are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric, hopefully he's back tomorrow. He's been sick. I want to play this audio. This is a guy by the name of Jeff Rath. He is an Alberta secessionist lawyer talking to the media, who's saying, well, with all the bad stuff that Trump says about Canada, why would you want to secede?
as problematic and seeking money to make this happen.
I understand that there's a lot of Ontarians and people in Quebec that suffer deeply from Trump derangement syndrome, but we're not doing anything untoward. It's absolutely, from our perspective, we're just conducting due diligence on behalf of our fellow Albertans. We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, we take what we're doing very seriously, and obviously the attitude of the United States towards Alberta independence, which incidentally is overwhelmingly enthusiastic, is something that informs our movement going forward. If the United States said, oh God, we can't tolerate that, it flies in the face of, the communist New World Order, we'll slap a 300% tariff on Albertans if they leave because we want you to remain resource slaves of the communist government in Ottawa, it would be a totally different conversation.
Wow.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.